My name is R. Crosby Lyles, and this is News from the Can. This is something I've been meaning to do for a while. I just want to go and check, because I just want to know what's going on. The global warming debate goes back and forth. People talk about the veracity of different government agencies like NASA and NOAA and stuff like that, and that they're falsifying data, and I don't really know. There's a lot of back and forth about the hockey stick and the veracity of the veracity of the organizations that are collecting the data. And so I just wanted to take a look for myself because I don't know what I want to find out. So I Googled it. And quite predictably, now, YouTube uses Wikipedia as sort of like their source for ground truth, I suppose, because if you do any sort of videos, which I have videos about climate, rapid onset ice age, the phenomenon of rapid onset ice age, and all this kind of stuff. And you will see, if you do anything like this, you will see a Wikipedia insert on your video. And so this is apparently their source of ground truth. Now, Wikipedia, I guess they spend a lot of time checking the veracity, again, not to overuse the word, but checking the veracity of the sources and the validity of the data. So just read the top of this thing here. This is a list of weather records, a list of the most extreme occurrences of weather phenomenon for various categories. Many weather records are measured under specific conditions such as surface temperature and wind speed to keep consistency among measurements around the Earth. Each of these records is understood to be the record value officially observed, as these records may have been exceeded before modern weather instrumentation was invented, or in remote areas without an official weather station. This list does not include remotely sensed observations such as satellite measurements, since those values are not considered official records. Now that's fascinating to me. Satellite measurements are not considered official records. You got to have a human being down there with some sort of official instrumentation to be able to, to collect that data. When you look at the Wikipedia for extreme temperatures, it's a lot more compelling than the data that I found independently by doing a search from Intellicast. Intellicast is, they're a weather service. What I look at Intellicast for is for their Atlantic satellite. If I want to look at during hurricane season, I like to look at the Atlantic satellite to see, to watch the clouds blow around and see what's cooking out there. So, and when you look down this, and I'm not going to bore you with all the numbers because I started to read off the numbers, and it's just voluminous. But if, just looking over the world here, starting with Africa, you can see that there's a lot of 2018s, 2016s. You got some numbers back in 1984, but there's not really too many. Here's a 1918 from South Africa. But, they're typically, here's a 1931 in Tunisia and Western Sahara in 1961. But most of them are in the 2000s, 2010. Antarctica, that's kind of up for grabs, 1982. That have to get into a whole discussion about what the spike temperatures are with that, and that's just like a side discussion I don't really want to get into at this particular moment, because I'm just looking at the data because I want to get an objective sense about what's really going on. And the way that my thinking is, if I look and I can see what the record temperatures are for recorded history up to this particular moment, then that would tell me something about, what's really going on global warming wise. And if you look at Wikipedia, well, it's kind of compelling. It is, because there aren't really too many values below 2000, below the year 2000. Here's 2009, 2011. This is in Armenia and Afghanistan. Here's a 1972 in Bangladesh, a 1997 in Bhutan. But back to 2016 in Cambodia, China's 2017, Hong Kong 2017, Macau 2017, 2006. They're all 2000s. Here's one 1942 with Israel, 2018 for Japan, 2002 for Jordan, right? 1998 Malaysia, but most of them here, 1999 Mongolia, but most of them are in the 2000s. Here 2017 Oman, right? 1983 Singapore, but most of them are in the 2000s at least, and very quite a few of them are in the at least 2016 to 2018, recent times. And that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking to see where, you know, where these high temperature, record high temperatures reside. And that should tell me something. You know, if all the record high temperatures are in, you know, the 1800s, well, damn, you know, that doesn't make much of an argument for global warming. But but consider the source. This is Wikipedia. This is YouTube, Google's apparent source for ground truth. And according to them, there's a lot of high temperatures in most of the high temperature records are in the 2000s. If Wikipedia is to be believed, you know, and I don't want to besmirch, I don't want to cast any aspersions or anything like that, because, you know, this concept of ground truth, and it really sucks that's in play. This is something that was never in play. We always trusted government agencies like NASA, NOAA, you know, their data was unimpeachable. You didn't argue with them. You said, well, shit, man, that's NASA. Those guys got to know what the hell they're talking about. Now, all of a sudden, their veracity is being questioned. And that's ponderous. Completely, you know, that's absurd. It's absurd that we would even be in a position like that. So, having said all that, I'm just looking, I'm trying to see what's going on. I'm not trying to, you know, I've got no point if I'm going to be talking about this stuff, I want to know what I'm talking about. And I just want to get an objective view, find some source for an objective view. So when I did my search for record temperatures, I did a Google search. And what I found is just for Gainesville, Florida. I was looking for Gainesville, Florida, just to see what the record is. And here it is. And the reason that I think that this is an objective source is because they're providing weather data for, you know, average folks to do, you know what I'm saying? They're not really, I don't think they really have that kind of skin in the game to where they're going to want to play with the numbers or whatever. When I look at their data, it's not that compelling. And I don't see, for the record highs in Gainesville, there are no 2000s. There's nothing past 2000. It's not compelling. The record lows, 1985, 1970, 1943. This is month on month here. This is January through December. That's what I read off just here. It's just not compelling. Either way, for global warming or cooling. And I looked around for places like Ottawa, Canada, because that's where Paul Beckwith is, you know, and he's a global warming guy. And they're always talking about how, you know, it's off the chain, man. It's things are warming up beyond belief, you know, and so forth. Data's not available. Record high and low temperatures is not available in telecast. Sorry. But anything within the United States, any territory within the United States, it's available. Here's Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, not available. Data not available. Right? Portland, Maine, record high. Oh, there's one in 2007, 1957, 1998, 1927, 1937, 1991. 1911, 1975, 1939, 1963, 2003, and 2001. So you got some 2000s in there. By the way, polar amplification. If you look at climatereanalyzer.org, most of your anomalously high temperatures occur in the polar regions during the wintertime. During the summertime, not so much. But during the wintertime, that's when you see these spikes in temperature. And a lot of times where you see those higher temperatures in that same place, you also have precipitation. That's snow right there. See that right there? So it's anomalously warm there, and it also happens to be snowing and sleeting in that same spot. There's this, and it's snowing in that exact same spot where that high temperature is. Higher than normal temperature. Here's another interesting thing. Sea surface temperature anomaly. This is anomalously cool here. And you have, in those same spots, you have cloud cover. Clouds and rain cools down the water surface temperatures. So one of the quirky little things about CO2 aggregates. It nucleates water droplets. In other words, it puts water droplets together. Makes it easier for rain droplets to form, for clouds to form. So you get a lot of methane that comes off of rice fields in India and China. That methane pretty rapidly reacts with hydroxyls in the atmosphere and other things. So you get carbon dioxide, stuff like that from that. But in any case, it's a mixed bag just from carbon dioxide alone. What the effect of over 400 parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere, what precisely that does to the atmosphere, to the environment, is not necessarily known. And my contention is that carbon dioxide on its own may not necessarily get you doomsday warming, like they're talking about. You may not actually, that may not actually come to pass from CO2 alone. And just to throw it out there, what will get you doomsday warming is when you acidify the oceans. When you have a combination of carbon dioxide and sulfur compounds. Sulfur dioxide, hydrogen sulfide to make sulfuric acid. That gets you to super heat trapping, and but it also, it's droplet forming, but then when you acidify the oceans, then it keeps the oceans from gobbling up all that CO2, because at pH of 8.2 or 8.4, which is what it is right now, most of the oceans just turn that CO2 right into carbonate compounds. Just eats it right up. If you look at any graph of oceanic carbon dioxide, there is no carbon dioxide below a certain level, because it's all turned into carbonate compounds. Because the ocean has got a higher alkalinity. The pH is 8.4. At the pH of the oceans during the Permian Triassic, the Permian Triassic and the PETM, the thermal maximum, those all happened as a result of volcanic eruptions, because of the sulfur compounds acidified the oceans and kept the oceans from being able to trap that CO2. So, and sulfur compounds in the atmosphere is also, will form droplets, and that combination of sulfuric acid and carbon dioxide cloud in the clouds is super heat trapping, and so that's just a horse of an entirely different color. Memes that are going on out there, what I'm hearing coming out of the mouths of people that I know in these discussions, is that supervolcanoes cause ice ages. Perhaps in the short term, a supervolcano, if it blocks out the sun and you have sulfur compounds in the stratosphere, yes, it will cause cooling in the relative short term. But you got to realize that those aerosols fall out of the sky within days. It doesn't take long for those aerosols to fall out. So, it depends on the magnitude of the eruption and so forth. It could turn cold for a while, but when it's done turning cold, then you're going to have doomsday warming, because those sulfuric particulates are going to get into the ocean and cause the oceans to become more acidic. And once the oceans become more acidic, then they won't be able to trap that carbon dioxide, and then then you got a situation. Then you have a thermal maximum on your hands. The thermal maximums were all caused by massive amounts of sulfur compounds, not just CO2, not just carbon. Carbon's not nearly as big a deal as the sulfur compounds. I keep banging this drum too, and this is a big misunderstanding that people have. I think that they're trying to. There's like 16,000 coal-fired power plants that are going to be coming online. It's either 1,600 or 16,000, somewhere in the neck of the woods. It's a lot. They're going to be opening up a lot of coal-fired power plants, and it's probably just they're running this narrative to get people, to loosen people up to the idea of maybe deregulating sulfur emissions, which is a real bad idea. It's a super duper bad idea. So there's that. And methane, this is the other one. So that the two memes that are going on are that somehow or another sulfur compounds cause global cooling and that methane causes global warming. And it's not necessarily true. Methane has about the same, very similar molecular weight to water. Water is 18 and methane is 16. So methane's a pretty light gas, and when it's like I said, most of the methane that is released in the atmosphere is not coming from the polar regions yet. It's not coming from the Arctic Circle. It's coming from India and China, from rice fields in India and China. It's just wafting off of there like it's an incredible amount. Okay, so, and you can look all that up. I've already done videos about it. But that methane goes right into the stratosphere. It goes straight up, and most of it reacts and turns into carbon dioxide and water on its way up. And another thing that methane does, because it's a volatile organic compound, is it also produces a lot of ozone. So, which is something that came off of the Pacific blob anomaly back in 2013. They had ozone coming from the blob probably because it had to do with the methane release, maybe. So, but what that does is that methane actually makes its way pretty rapidly to the stratosphere. Free radicals up there necessarily take it out for ozone. Ozone will destroy methane, interestingly enough. Methane is a reaction body that helps in the creation of ozone, but ozone will also destroy methane too, and you get carbon dioxide and water from that reaction eventually. But anyway, once methane gets into the stratosphere, what it does is it releases water into the stratosphere. And water in the stratosphere, methane or water, any greenhouse gas in the stratosphere actually causes global cooling. And the reason for that is because of the proximity of space. Where space is, the heat trapping near the surface is caused because the greenhouse molecules are actually trading the infrared photons back and forth. Well, when you get close to space in the stratosphere, half of those photons get traded back and forth, bouncing back towards the Earth, and the other half of them just dissipate out into space. So therefore, those global heat-trapping gases in the stratosphere actually cause global cooling. So large releases of methane are really probably more likely to cool the planet down than to heat it up, frankly. CO2 is another story. Yes, CO2 is heat trapping. Yes, water is heat trapping. But, I'll tell you, you look at the data. Okay, if you look at the Wikipedia data, it's pretty compelling. That's pretty compelling. Most of your high temperature spikes are in the 2000 teens. They're in the 2000s, somewhere between 2000 and 2018. But when I look at the IntelliCast data, and who are they? I mean, they're just, what I mean? It's like they don't have any skin in the game. But interestingly, like I say, places like Ottawa, other countries, Mexico City, not available. So, which is fascinating, right? I mean, do they just not trade data? I'm sure there's a quirk for that. There's some reason for that. Maybe they have another, they're just sort of, they have their Mexico has their own weather service and they don't share their data or something. It could be something totally mundane why they don't share their data. But when you look at the data that Intellicast is putting up, you know, I'll tell you, it's not really all that compelling for the hockey stick thing. Here's, like I said, this is Portland, Maine, 2007. Okay. 1957, 1998, 1927, 1937, 1991, 1911, 1975, 1939, 1963, 2003, and 2001. Okay, well, that's ish. Key West. It's all in the 1800s, 1877, 1874, 1874, 1881, 1881, 1886. All in the 1800s, 1962, 1876, almost all in the 1800s for the record highs for Key West. Record lows, 1981, 1917, 1986, 1987, right? 1888, 1910, 1959, 1989. You know, here, let me look at Juneau. 1940 record highs, 1942, here's one in 1990, 1992, 1943, here's one in 2003, 2004, but the rest of them are 1947, 1916, so, you know, just not compelling. I think I did Rio de Janeiro, right, not available, so, Seattle. 1931. This one, 2004. It's March. They seem to have spikes in March for some reason. In the 2000s. These 1963, 1925. Not really very many. It's 1939, 1949, 1987, 1988, 1981, 1994. So, you know, did I do Fairbanks already? Bismarck, North Dakota. You got some 2000s here for record highs. 2002, 1992, 2007, 92, 1934, 2002 again, 1936, 1941, 1959, 1963, 1999, 1939. Not terribly compelling. Lows, 19, you know, you can see it. Yeah. So, U.S. Virgin Islands, you know, it's got to be U.S. Virgin Islands. If I look for another Virgin Islands, it's, you know, like the British Virgin Islands, it's not available. 1996, 94, 96, 94, 93, 95. Low records, 96, 1972, 2001, 99, 2007. So, there it is. But anyway, the end of the video, there's all the data. We'll put it up to music, and you can look at it for yourself. Links are in the description. You know, it's just like I said. I think I put up American Samoa. American Samoa. Yeah, you got a bunch of 2000, but that's the same year, 2002, 2001, and the rest of it's 98, 1958, 1988. It's just not terribly, you know. It was cold in 1965 and 1964. They had their record low. And I think Kilauea was erupting about that same time. So, might have something to do with it, maybe. You know, one of the interesting things about this is that you will see that, and I believe the record, there's a couple of places here where the record high, and you'll have the record high and the record low in the same year, same month, same year. So there are, you know, weather phenomenon that will cause record heating and cooling depending on what the atmospheric conditions are like, you know, what's going on. So, you know, there it is. It's an argument that is perpetually unsettled. So we find ourselves probing the bushes, looking for something to give us an indication of who and what to believe. Should I believe Intellicast? I mean, Do they really have enough skin in the game to change the data that's coming from these different sources? Meanwhile, though, data from other countries is not available. So, yeah, it's kind of weird. It's a spooky place to be as an American, because we used to, I used to trust these institutions, and I want to trust them. Well, I'm dying for a sense of ground truth. But somehow or another, the powerful people have managed to put us in a state where we're questioning everything. That's where we are. So, links are in the description. Make up your own mind. What I will say is that thermodynamics and fluid dynamics on a global scale is complicated, and you can't pigeonhole anything. In many cases, the record heat will be in the same year, the same month. You will have a record high and a record low in the same month. This is in Gainesville, Florida. September of 1925, the record low was 38 and the record high was 99. In the same month in the same year. So the same forces that can create record high temperatures can create record low temperatures. Greenhouse gases that trap heat can also produce water droplets, clouds that can block the sun and keep that energy from hitting the ground, from heating up the planet. Anomalous cool sea surface temperatures also happen to coincide with where there's a lot of clouds. Those clouds are formed by the presence of water vapor. So, there you have it. And I hope you got something out of this video. Thanks for watching. See you.